and the Graham Group. I always
correct.
get that. Hello, thanks so much for joining us on our next episode of Business Casual. We are here with Brandy Pfalmer, my dear friend from Mile High Modern Realty and the Graham Group. I always get that.
Yeah, so I'm with the Graham Group,
Yes.
and we're brokeraged by Mile High Modern.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much, Michelle.
Thank you so much. So you just recently went over to Mile High Modern. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Your videos, by the way, or your pictures are amazing
Aren't
on
they
there.
incredible?
Yeah, you do such a great job. First of all, the houses are gorgeous.
I know I keep saying, what happens when we get an ugly listing?
I don't know because they're amazing. Every single house, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want that one too. It looks so cute. So how do you like being in this new space?
You know, Michelle, I love it. It's great for me. There's lots of learning opportunities. I'm kind of surrounded by some of the top producing agents
Yeah.
in the industry. So while my heart is beating quick, I know it's the right thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
We met, I'm just going to back up a little bit. We met working with you were working with another company. And one of the things that really struck out to me, well, first of all, every time we would get together, I just loved our conversations that we had. But when you left that company, you called me, I think, within 24 hours. And it really touched me. It was something that was just so genuine about you to say, look, I don't want us to lose connection. And I loved that about you. So I so appreciate you.
Oh, well, I will tell you, one of the things that's kind of throughout my whole life has been my friendships and my relationships. And it doesn't matter where I work, especially when I make those connections, I want to keep them.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me a little bit about how you, there's so much I actually want to talk about because you inspire me so much. There is stuff that you post quote cards all the time. I don't even know where you come up with these quotes, where you find them. You do Wednesday Wisdom. You're such an advocate for business owners and especially women business owners. You really are always inspiring for that. Inspiring by posting and encouraging them. You do networking groups. You've started House of Light. You're a traveler and an avid reader. You just inspire me, truly. So tell me what got you started. I know you have 4 children as well. Have you always been kind of being a realtor is an entrepreneur mind, So tell me how that started for you.
Well, I'm the firstborn.
Okay.
So that says a lot. And I think that I have so much energy, but I always remember being an entrepreneur, like I know this sounds silly, but we used to get these things when I was a kid in the mail and you would sell postcards and birthday cards and greeting cards to your neighbors.
Yeah.
And I would always be that kid knocking on the door, selling to the neighbors or selling T-shirts, like whatever it could to make I could do.
Yeah.
And I have my own little business and earn extra money, I would.
That's incredible. Now, were your parents entrepreneurs or did they
No.
9 to 5?
Yep. So it wasn't my parents. It was just something that's always been inside of me, and just always constantly looking for something different and learning and growing. I don't know. I've really seen it as a good trait, but I almost never feel like completely satisfied. I always want to learn and grow and do different things.
So I like that. And I think that as an entrepreneur, you can't really stay stagnant. You have to just keep learning. I think as a human being, we should always be doing that. But I think especially when you're creating your own paycheck, you have to keep learning and adjusting and growing.
Well, I will tell you for sure, when you wake up in the morning and you think, if I don't do my work, if I don't start early in the morning and I give it all I've got, I have those 4 people counting on me, 5 people counting my husband. So I think that's kind of what drives you.
Yeah. Well, and he's retired now this year, right?
I know. He's retired, but starting to look for that next thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And what was he doing?
he was in federal law enforcement.
Okay.
So for
he probably needed to
26 years,
retirement.
and he's not getting back into law enforcement or
Yeah.
managing people.
Oh, that's probably good. He needs something that's a little more low key, right? Still keeps you active, but more low key, a little less stress.
Yep.
So, and how old are your kids?
So I have a 21-year-old daughter. I have a 20-year-old son, a 17-year-old son, and soon-to-be 16-year-old son.
Oh, my goodness.
So, Michelle, when I had my 4th, I remember my oldest wasn't in kindergarten, and they're 5.5 years from first to start. And when we found out I was pregnant with the 4th, we were embarrassed to tell anybody else because every year we sent out a Christmas card and there was like one new baby added to it.
Oh my goodness. We had that with when we had found out we were pregnant with our fourth, because we had the two boys and then we had Emma, and then literally 3 months later, I walk into Dwayne and I said, we're doing this again, and her birthday is like 3 days after Emma's. So they're a year apart. They have the exact same due date. Like, okay, we're done. We're done after this. So thankful. Two boys and two girls. But I was like, we're done now.
Yeah, we were the same.
So tell me, were you working all while they were growing up?
So kind of little background is I come from the publishing industry. So I was did editorial and advertising and did tons of travel. I would travel like 2 to 3 weeks a year, like in New York and all different places. And so when I got pregnant with my second, I thought, this is not going to work.
Yeah.
I started freelancing for a PR firm in New York, and that still wasn't going to work. I wasn't able to, but I took some time off. I worked part-time. I got my master's degree. I started the nonprofit, but I've done little jobs all the way through. But until about 5 years ago, I didn't step back into that role full time.
Full time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we talked about that. That's kind of about the time that we met. Yeah, just getting right back into that, and I think I was really kind of doing the same thing.
You were
around that time.
I think that's what we bonded from that.
Yeah, you're right. So, tell me a little bit about the House of Light that you started.
So I have phenomenal friends, including you, Michelle. But so it was 7 of us, so 6 of my friends. We were doing a Bible study at the church we were going to, and I don't know, you would drive down the streets and you would see furniture literally sitting on the side of the road for free. And we are in the same time doing like a backpack. You would pack food in a backpack for a school in Cherry Creek because those children weren't eating on the weekends.
Right.
So it just was like, and that school was probably 5 miles from where our school was. So it was just such a dramatic change. And I actually started thinking about it like, gosh, I love my kids. I love my home, and how lucky we are to come in and my kids had a place to do their homework.
Yeah.
They had a place to sleep at night. Like all the basics were provided for, and those kids just down the street were not getting that.
Yeah.
So I started researching, and I came across another organization in Detroit called Humble Design.
Okay.
And so I called the owner of that company, and we chatted. And honestly, for no better thing than trying, we did a lot of bumps and bruises along the way.
Yeah.
But I feel like sometimes when you're trying to do the right thing, all the right doors open up.
Right. So tell me about the struggles of starting a nonprofit. I mean, we talked a little bit about this because I had a vision for one, and I was like, I love you, Brandy. But I don't know that. I mean, and I want to do this, but I just don't think I can right now. In that space.
It has been. We're definitely a well-oiled machine now, but we were a hot mess in the beginning. Yeah. Things just kind of happen. Like I said, doors open when you're doing the right thing. So I had seen the president of a company called Family Tree on, I think it was 9 News, like 9 Cares. And so I just called him up and said, hey, we're starting this nonprofit. It's called House of Light. And we were actually trying to think of the right word. We were not a nonprofit that first year. We were like under the wings of our church because you kind of have to establish it. There are so many fake nonprofits. So told him what we were doing, that we were going to be collecting furniture, and we wanted to work with them to distribute it and turn these people coming out of homelessness and turning those houses into homes. So in the beginning, we had nothing. We had no furniture, no money. So what we did is we kind of did an organic, like from our own stuff, from people we knew. Yeah. People, we still are some of the biggest donors. The people who actually help run it are some of the biggest donors in our organization. But I think through a lot of trials and error, we kind of have it down. We used to set up the furniture, deliver it to homes. So we were very limited on the number of people we could serve. Okay. And now we have a storage unit where people come. We work with Family Promise, Family Tree, Aurora Housing, Jeffco Housing. Yeah. And all those organizations come to our storage unit with their clients, and they're able to pick up some of the necessities. In the beginning, we were doing all kinds of furnishings, and now we've narrowed that down to beds,
Oh, okay.
lamps, table and chairs. So those are kind of the necessities that we see
Okay.
with the most need.
So you have people coming in and actually bringing down items to the warehouse, correct?
Yep, you have to schedule, but we once a month we meet all our clients or all our, people who are shelters and things like that at the storage unit, and then we disperse the items.
So where can people find you guys to either donate or to items or money? I would assume would be helpful as well.
Probably the number one spot is on our website, www.houseoflightcolorado.org. And so from there, you can donate. And then you can also, because we're limited on our space and what we can take, we need to make sure those items are acceptable.
Okay.
So
Okay. And I think you have something still with Amazon. Is that correct? Like you can do that Amazon Cares. Is that correct?
Unfortunately, Amazon is not doing that program any
Oh, really?
longer.
That's too bad.
It is too bad because
Yeah.
that was everyone does Amazon.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it kind
yeah.
of gave a little of your guilt away. You knew you were giving back to a
Right.
nonprofit.
Now tell me a little bit about how the families are chosen to receive the care.
So we're very specific that you have to be working with one of these shelters,
Okay.
just because that's a safety concern for everybody involved. It also it kind of narrows down because these families are actually working with some of the facilities and going through different trainings.
Right. Okay.
So-
Okay. And are they kind of in rehab, any of those, or just kind of mostly just making sure that they're kind of on the path of getting better and finding housing?
Finding house. Well, I will say probably about 95% of our clients are actually single moms
Okay.
that are maybe coming out of a domestic situation or have just found themselves in a situation they didn't think would be there. Another kind of category of people that we're seeing is kids that are coming out of the foster care system.
Okay.
Because once you're 18 years old, you no longer have any kind of assistance from the state. So that is,
Wow. So they're just on their own at
they're
18.
on their
Just
own
figure
at
it out.
18. So,
Yeah.
in fact, we had a 18-year-old young lady, and we provided a bed to her, and she said that is the very first time in her whole life that she's ever had her own bed.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Now, how did she find? So she was working with one of the programs to find housing.
was.
Okay. We talked a little bit when because we're in book club together. So I know we were talking with you and Emily. Is that
Emily,
correct?
yes.
Yeah. And about how close people are to homelessness. Do you think that that's more in the Denver area, or do you feel like that's all over?
I think it's all over, Michelle. I think honestly, for so many of us, there's like a path. There's two roads, and you can take one way or the other, and sometimes a silly decision leads us
Right.
down that wrong path.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, also with the cost of living, especially with where we are. I mean, I think Emily's was even mentioning just one paycheck away sometimes before.
I cannot remember what those stats are, Michelle, but especially with inflation
Yeah.
and, I mean, we joke about it, but the cost of eggs, the cost
Yeah,
of milk.
yeah.
And for so many families who are already living on the very edge of things.
Right.
I
Yeah.
wonder what, we've seen numbers come up and
Yeah.
need come up for
Yeah.
sure.
I appreciate you doing that and sharing about that because that is, it's inspiring and I'm sure a lot of work.
Well, I will say I have a great team.
Yeah.
They are phenomenal. People donate a ton of time to us. And it really is, they're just fantastic. So,
Yeah.
and it's been the best thing, one of the best things that I've ever done.
Yeah.
Real quick, Michelle, we've donated over 1,000 beds to like 880 families.
Oh my
So,
gosh. How incredible.
Yep.
That's
it's
incredible.
been good.
So I was also, I know we've talked about this, but you made a post about being a warrior, which I just so loved. Now talk about getting choked up. You said it before. I loved that post because it was just real and raw. You were talking about your journey, your health journey of your surgery. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So I've kind of been profiled, like our flagged high profile. My grandma had breast cancer at 36.
Okay.
And so I've always had this concern. And every time I go have my mammogram about every 6 months, and I swear I am always flagged. I always have to do the biopsy, and I've even had a surgical biopsy. But this time when it came back with atypical dysplasia, and which is just kind of a fancy term, as my breast surgeon said, is the cells in my breast tissue have started forming the shape of cancer. They just have not connected yet.
Okay.
So I right away said to my husband, gosh, I'm going to do a double mastectomy, a bilateral mastectomy. And he's like, that just seems crazy. Let's talk to the surgeon. Let's see what she has to say. And we walked in the door and she said, you have no choice. You need to have a bilateral mastectomy. And so Michelle, I know this sounds crazy, and I just think it's a way of looking at things, it was such a gift. It was such a gift to be able to catch that, because, if I didn't do it, I would just be 6 months later, like when would I know that cancer came? So
Right. And always worried about it.
always worried.
Right.
So
Yeah. So you had this diagnosis. You decided to go in to get your double mastectomy. You get news about your dad.
oh my gosh. It was a rough year. I'm just going to
Right.
say that. So my dad, before I went in to have my surgery, I got a call from my dad, and he had, he's an old cowboy, pretty old school. He has not been to the doctor, only had stayed in the hospital once when he had a heart attack and was
Okay.
flight for life. That's the only time in his whole life he'd ever been in the hospital. But he had stage 3 colon cancer. And I obviously had been going on for a long time, had a very significant sized tumor, and his prognosis was not great, even though colon cancer is pretty curable if
Right.
caught in time, but this had gone on for a long time. So the remedy was going to be he was going to have to do radiation and chemo at the same time.
Okay. Wow. That was intense, right? So how did he recover?
Well, so my dad is tough. If any, I've definitely became a warrior because of my dad. He's an old school cowboy. I don't think there's anybody more tough than he is. But he went through chemo and radiation and then had his tumor removed. And so as far as we know, he has recovered. He's gained some weight. He's not a very big guy, but he's lost a significant amount of weight, but he's gained it back. And swears he will never go back to a doctor again. So we assume he's recovered, Michelle.
Yeah. So you get this news, and then you have to go in for surgery, right?
Yes.
And so your mindset, I'm sure, is a little stressed. Would you say that's true?
I would say that's true. But I just almost I didn't process what I was doing. And I just okay, I've just got to do this. I've got to recover and then focus on my dad.
And then 6 days later, you're back to work after your surgery.
Well, Michelle, I have never had a busier month than
Right.
that day.
It was during the summer.
No, it was in March. So March,
Okay.
if you look back, March and April and May were the busiest, craziest months I've ever in
Right.
Colorado real estate. I remember the night before my surgery I had a deal that I went under contract for. I literally was on the phone getting wheeled down to the surgery room, trying to set up inspections and stuff.
my goodness.
The lady said, ma'am, you're going to have to put your phone away. And then after surgery, I was trying to have a conversation with my sales partner.
Oh my gosh.
And it's like, you don't need to call anybody. So
Take a minute. So did you go to Paris this same year?
I did.
You did.
So my husband and I, with the 4 kids, we don't have a whole lot of one-on-one time. And we decided a long time ago, gosh, when they graduate high school, we're going to go on a trip.
Yeah.
And I had never been to Europe. It's always been a goal of mine. And so my daughter is a 2020 graduate.
Yeah.
We were supposed to go, I still remember the date, March 17th.
Right.
And that did not happen.
Right.
In March 17, 2020. So we postponed that trip, and then we finally got to go, which was incredible.
It looked like it was incredible. Tell me what you enjoyed the most.
Oh my gosh. So now I definitely have the travel bug.
Right.
Here's my advice to anybody out there listening. 1, you're never too old, but number 2, do it before you have a mortgage. Do it before you have those kids.
Right.
Because I wish I would have traveled more.
Yeah.
But I will say I loved Paris.
Did
I loved
you?
everything about it. I loved the fashion. I loved the art, the architecture. Like just the food was incredible. And I felt like everybody, I mean, language wasn't a barrier. It was just phenomenal.
I can't. I think you said you would live there. I think if you said if you were single.
If I were single and younger, I would totally live in Paris.
Yeah,
No doubt.
Yeah, I can't wait to go check it out.
You have to.
Have you ever seen Emily in Paris?
No, I haven't. I know.
Somebody had turned me on, and my sister came one weekend, and so we just binge watched it, and I was like, just from the fashion and everything, I'm like, these are my people.
That's how I
love
felt.
this. I need to go there.
I'm going to watch it because that's how I felt. I was like, for one, I felt just a titch smarter and more cultured.
Right.
But
How long were you guys there?
so we were in Paris 4 days. We flew in. We had a layover in Iceland, which was incredible.
Was it?
We went to Paris, and then we flew into London, which I liked London, but it wasn't. I didn't love it like I did Paris. And then we flew back through Iceland, and we went out to the Blue Lagoon and spent like a 10-hour layover.
Yeah.
In those incredible ponds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just talked with my friend Kristen, and she loves winter. I
don't understand
I don't
that.
understand that either, and that's what I told her. She, for her birthday, took a solo trip to Iceland. She loved it. She said she learned so much, and she just took a solo trip to Iceland. So she said it was incredible.
Air travel is not far to Iceland.
That's what she said it
wasn't
was
far
not
at
very
all.
expensive either, and so that was interesting. So what did your daughter love about it?
Gosh, I think she loved a lot of the same things
Yeah.
too. She was a great traveling partner. It became to the point where she's so tech savvy. I almost felt like the kid and she was the adult. I'd be like, what gate are we at? I can't see my phone. Or I'm like, oh, could you book this? And she's so quick at doing stuff. So
my daughter she's our youngest. So again, I'm sorry, girls, 23. She just got a job with United Airlines, and so she was able to get standby like right away. Her benefits start quickly, so she just took a solo trip to New York, and I was like, I love this. I love that you're doing this now.
I know.
No kids. She does have her partner, but he wasn't able to go with her, so she was like, I'm just gonna go, and she totally loved it.
well, and I just had a conversation with a friend who's the same age I am, because I remember at her age, I was traveling to New York. I'd never been. I went all by myself. I had no fear at all. And I had apprehension of going to Europe.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, what are they like? How do I get through customs? There was that little bit of anxiety piece that happens when you get a little bit older.
I was just going to say, I think that when you get older, now all of the fears start coming on, or what am I going to do, or how am I going to do this? And
what if I don't get through? What if I lose my passport? What if someone, all the things.
Right, yeah.
But once I got over there, it all faded away.
Yeah. I told, even as you say that, I have told Dwayne before that I think that sometimes, and I don't know if you feel like this, I think as an entrepreneur, it is so easy when you're in your 20s, you're willing to take risks that you are not, or you start slowing down to those risks. You become a little bit more cautious. I think that's good and bad, right? So you have some experiences, but at the same time, they can jade you from taking other chances. What do you think?
Gosh, so looking back when I jumped right into being a small business owner is that, of course, I had those fears, but I think everybody has fears, and I think that's perfectly normal. But I think if you don't face those fears and just jump right through them, you're missing out. I think
agree.
that's the only way you're going to grow.
I completely agree. And, I take this even as doing this podcast. We've talked about this before. I'm an introvert. I'm like, I'll just stay over here. But getting outside of my comfort zone and pressing forward has been huge. And I think it's important to continue to do that to grow. Otherwise, you just stay stagnant.
Well, and here is something that I've really come to realize, and why I support small business owners, especially women, is that I become so proud of people like you, Michelle, that have started their own business, because I know that fear's there, and to step outside that, it's asking a lot. I had seen, and I watched actually a TED Talk. So 90% of women that ever step away from their career to help raise or to raise their children, like 90% never go back into the workforce.
Oh, wow. Why do you think that is?
Fear.
Yeah.
I think it's fear. Everything's changed, so it's difficult. And it's difficult to actually, you lose those connections. It's all about who you know.
Yeah. That's really tough because on one hand, I would never want to discourage somebody from stepping away from the workforce to raise their children. I loved being at home with the kids. I would dabble and work here and there. I did some things from home but I loved for the most part being able to have that space. So
In that time, right?
Yeah, in that time. And so the idea that women are hesitant to get back into the workforce afterwards makes me a little sad, but I can see that could be the case.
I wish that someone had given me the advice to like, hey, don't let all those connections fall apart.
Right.
Be sure. Like I was a writer and I had thousands of pieces and not all lengthy, but I couldn't even tell you where they are.
Oh my goodness.
I let my whole portfolio go. I thought, oh, everything will be on the internet, which is not.
Right.
And
right.
maybe just because that's in the beginning of the
Yeah.
internet.
Right.
But
Everything else is still there.
But I wish someone would have said, "Hey, Brandy, you need to like keep up on your skills, keep up on your relationships with your workforce, and then just keep current."
So you are starting though, getting back into writing with your blogs.
I am.
Yes. How is that going?
Good. I feel like I've started this writing, and it just 3 things. It's called 3 Things. I want to gather enough pieces before I actually launch it.
Right.
But my very first piece was 3 things my golden retriever has taught me.
Okay.
If I recall, they're like loyalty, forgiveness, and just letting things go. So so it's honestly 3 things, and it's random stuff throughout my whole life that I've written on, like 3 things of raising a college athlete, or 3 things being the daughter of a cowboy, 3 things growing up in a small town. So those are some of the topics
So
I've
is
written
this
on.
going to turn into a book at some point?
Gosh, I don't know about that.
I don't know. That could be a great vision. All these little
Tips.
bits, of wisdom, and You also did I don't know that you did a course, but you were talking about your desire to buy a house for your college student as an investment. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I did a seminar last year. I'm actually going to do another seminar March. It's March 22nd is the tentative date on that. But what I wanted to kind of portray is we did buy an investment property where my daughter's going to college. I had 2 kids in college, and the amount of money I was paying back to the college, not in tuition, but in room and board, was ridiculous. I was paying $1,000 per month per child to be in like a tiny little, my son was in a dorm room, so that was kind of his room and board, but my daughter was in a very tiny apartment, sharing it with another person.
Okay.
So I was like, how can we, for one, we took the equity out of our current home, some of it, and we bought this home where she's going to college, and it's just provided an opportunity for my family, for the families that are renting there, because they're paying about half of what they were paying to the school too.
Wow. So you invested it. So tell me a little bit about what you're teaching at the seminar.
So I'm really talking about my experience and how that worked. We worked with my lender, who you've met, Michelle Tomei, and she's had some great insight. What we did is we worked with our daughter, who had some credit, not great credit.
Right.
You don't have a lot of credit at 21. And we wanted her to have skin in the game.
Yeah.
Because if we were doing this, we wanted the property to be well taken care of. We
Right.
wanted
Very
her to
smart.
gain some things from it. She's like our property manager, and she is also on our title.
Oh.
So she's getting credit along the way.
Wow, that's great. So when she's out of school, then will you continue to rent it out to, what's your vision with that?
So I really will wait and see what the market's like. My suggestion when I do the seminar and what we did is we bought a little bit further from college because I wanted to be able to, one, if we wanted to rent it out to a family, once those kids left, that would be an
Yeah.
option.
Right.
Or number two, I bought a property that I could easily fix and flip
Okay. That's a good,
in
yeah.
a neighborhood.
Yeah.
So I can just, I have a design eye where I knew the
Yes.
bones were good. We went in, we did a ton of painting. We just
Yeah.
did some floor work. We painted our cabinets a really cool
Yeah.
greenish
Yeah.
gray.
Yeah.
And so we'd be able to flip that property right
Right.
now.
Yeah.
So
That's great. That's exciting. Okay, I have to go back to my notes here because you have so much going on. I think I wanted to talk about what is why is the going back to the House of Light? I know you talked about your vision with that. Tell me what kind of keeps you going, whether it's the House of Light, your, just everything that you're involved in. Again, the book club and your networking and your, everything that you're doing, you always seem to be going. You talked about going into surgery. What is keeping you going? What's motivating you?
So I think that's a great question to answer is what motivates you. And I know exactly what motivates me. So growing up, I had a pretty rocky childhood. I kind of grew up in a very abusive home. My mom, we had very little money. So my grandparents on my mom's mom and dad were just kind of like our heroes for my sister and I. They were very solid in their just their demeanors in terms of their like in the community. My grandfather was the mayor of the town.
Oh, okay.
My grandma served on several boards. She was the local Avon lady. But they were just honestly, they were the that piece in our childhood that was solid. They were the things, the people that we could look to that kind of got it. Honestly, Michelle, if I had not had them, I could be someone who would be needing House of Light. So, kind of circle back, they inspire me. So I remember at my grandfather's funeral, and like I said, he was just an inspiration. They did so much for the community. They did so much in their jobs. He was a water engineer for the state of Colorado, so a lot of those Colorado laws. I remember being at his funeral, and he had a park named after him. And I thought right then and there, if I don't want to be at my funeral and not do the things that I wanted to do. I want to live this life. Every single thing that I have wanted to do, I'm going to do. I'm going to try to treat people with the same respect and kindness. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to let people walk all over me,
Right.
which I think there's a distinction there.
There is.
But it was just at that moment that I thought, I'm gonna do all these things.
And how old were you then when they died?
So I was in my late 20s. I had my first 3 children. So I was probably in my early 30s, actually.
Okay. So how did you then, you said your home was abusive. Is that from both parents? Do you mind me asking?
No,
into
not at
this?
all. So my mom and dad divorced when I was 6, and my mom remarried to a man who was very abusive to her and then to my sister and I. My dad, he was a little bit of a workaholic, so we saw him, on holidays and in the summer. And so we were just the best thing about being in a small community, and the worst thing is that everybody knows your business. But I will tell you, I have the best of friends, and their parents knew. They took care of us, and they always
Yeah.
kind of looked out for us.
Now, you talked about do you feel like when your grandparents died, that was a pivotal moment for you? Or do you feel like you were observing how you were being raised and said, I'm going to do something different?
I think, I don't think it necessarily when they died, it was a pivotal moment. I think that I've always been this kind of person inside, this like, I want to do all the things right. I want to be, I see what's in front of me, and that's not what I want it to be.
It's interesting how much adversity you can either fall victim to things that are happening to you, or you can say, I'm going to do something completely different. And don't you think? I mean, I think that
gosh.
it's just it's interesting to see how many people can eat. You can see that, right? You and not everybody comes from the perfect family. I don't think anybody does,
No.
right? So, but out of that, it's almost like those who have struggled the most, you almost see this rising above.
Well, and I feel like I think you're right. I think going through some really hard times, you develop empathy. My sister and I, we had free lunches at the school, and I can remember just that angst that anybody would find out that my card was different from everybody else's
Right.
card, or that I remember my mom always had this super cute house, but it was little. And the other thing I remember, and this drives me to this day, this is going to make you laugh, Michelle. For one, school was like my outlet, right? Like, oh
Right.
my gosh. And I've always been a talker and involved in everything. So that was my outlet. But I remember as a freshman, I had this boyfriend and he was a senior. He was kind of like the popular guy. And his mom, she drives me to this day. She thought I wasn't good enough for him. So I won't say her name on air, but her thinking I wasn't good enough for her son, that still makes me wake up. And
Right. That is interesting. I'm going to say this, and she will deny it to this day, but my mother-in-law, I know she said the same thing to Dwayne. She'll swear she didn't, but there was a season that she did. She was like, I don't want you to be around her. So, but there it is. 30 years later.
It's all out the air now.
She won't see this. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me today. It is such a pleasure talking with you.
The pleasure is all mine. I feel like I can't even feel like I was on a podcast because I just felt like we got to sit down and talk.
I agree. Thank you so much.
Love you, Michelle.
Love you too. Thank you guys so much for joining us on today's podcast. I hope to see you next time.